My cheating wife planned to run away with my fortune. She intended to disappear, taking every penny I had accumulated through hard work, patience, and sleepless nights. She believed she could manipulate me, deceive me, turn me into a compliant victim. She thought that by giving me false promises of love and a facade of devotion, she would be able to carry out her cunning plan. But she never imagined that I knew everything, that her mask had been slipping for a long time. That smile she gave me every morning. I knew it hid something dark. That sweetness in the words when he said, "I love you," started to sound hollow, like an empty shell of real feelings. The hugs before bed, the distant look during our dinners. Everything was falling into place like pieces of a dark puzzle that I never thought I would have to put together. The signs were subtle at first. Phone calls she made outside the house, always saying it was work. A hastily read message on my cell phone that disappeared before I could ask. Just a friend asking about something silly. She lied with her eyes fixed on me, daring me to be suspicious. I wanted to believe it was just stress, that our routine was worn out and it was just a phase. But then came the nights out, the credit cards used in places I didn't recognize. "I need some time for myself," she said as she left, leaving the echo of high heels in the hallway and a bitter feeling in the air. Until the day she made the mistake. A message. A simple slip, a name that shouldn't be there, a conversation about the big plan and the right time to act. My heart accelerated. His breath caught in his chest. I didn't want to believe that the woman I had built a life with, the woman who promised to be by my side forever, was plotting against me. But reality was there, naked and raw, crushing every bit of hope. It was then that I started to act. Silent, calculating, almost invisible. I hired a detective to follow his footsteps. Every secret meeting, every suspicious transaction, every word spoken in confidence to someone who wasn't me. A lover? No, worse. An accomplice. They planned everything together, how to transfer my funds to secret accounts, how to escape to some faraway place and live a life of luxury with the money I worked hard to earn. And I watched everything, in silence, boiling inside, feeling my soul tearing apart with each new discovery. The best part about having a wife who underestimates your intelligence is that she never waits for you to act first. While she plotted in the shadows, I was already preparing my own move. I spent weeks reorganizing my finances, rewriting contracts, transferring accounts to trusted names. I knew the right moment was coming, and when it came, she would have nowhere to run. She thought that the day she struck the final blow, she would have everything in her hands. But she didn't know that I had already taken everything from her. And then the fateful night came. She was beaming, ready to finalize her plan with her lover who was waiting outside, with bags packed and clear instructions to disappear together. She didn't know that that smile she gave me as she said goodbye was the last time she would use her charm on me. She thought she would leave me empty, with nothing but the pain of betrayal and financial ruin. But I had already prepared the ground, I had already set the trap into which she would fall. She left without knowing it. And as soon as the wheels of the car started turning toward the new life she planned to build at my expense, I had already signed the divorce agreement, without her knowing, without witnesses. The lawyers were ready, and the papers were served as soon as she left the house. Her every account was frozen, every access denied. The lover, with a wide smile and empty promises, would be her last mistake. I didn't leave her anything. Not a dollar, not a piece of jewelry, not even a trace of the life she thought she could steal from me. In the end, what she thought would be a fairy tale of freedom and fortune turned into a nightmare of closed doors and empty accounts. The only thing left was the echo of her own betrayal and the cruel realization that she was never in control, never the master of the game. I knew she would turn to her family, crying, begging for help, saying that I had betrayed her, wronged her unfairly. But I had already gotten ahead of myself. Imagine the scene: she arrives at her parents' house, desperate, with swollen eyes and a trembling voice, looking for shelter and support. But instead of open arms, she finds closed doors. "How could you do that?" he hears from his own mother. "How did you have the courage to betray your husband, to deceive all of us?" says the father, with a look of disappointment sharper than any knife. "She is rejected, banished from her own family, who, instead of defending her, takes my side." And it was there, at that exact moment, that the penny dropped. She had nothing, she had no one. And in the end, all she destroyed was herself. And while she stares at the void left by her greed, I walk toward a future without her. After all, justice doesn't always come the way we expect, and revenge doesn't always need sharp words or screams of hate. Sometimes silence and coldness are more powerful weapons than any cry of revolt. But this story is not over yet. And after all, there is something more she needs to discover. Something that, until now, she can't even imagine. Something that will change everything once again. Welcome to the channel where betrayal will never be justified. Here, we tell fictional stories that show how disloyalty destroys lives, breaks hearts and leaves deep scars. Brace yourself, because the story you are about to hear will shock you, surprise you and remind you that the price of betrayal is too high for anyone to pay. So, sit down, get ready, and let's go into this impactful story together. Amidst the frenetic hustle and bustle of New York life, Jack and Anna seemed like the perfect couple. Married for almost 15 years, they had built a comfortable and successful life together. Jack was a methodical man, dedicated to business and the growth of the company that, with a lot of sweat, he managed to build from nothing. His days were filled with long hours of work, intense meetings and travel, always with the aim of offering his family the best possible lifestyle. He was a silent man in his pains, practical in his actions and extremely zealous about his achievements, Anna, his wife, included. Anna was the definition of natural elegance. He moved with a grace that aroused admiration wherever he went, but he also had the simplicity and friendliness that made anyone feel at ease in his presence. Her beauty, always impeccable, was not what impressed Jack most. He admired the way she maintained balance with her own ambitions. Anna ran a small art gallery and, even though it was not as financially prosperous as her husband's business, it was her safe haven, the space where she expressed her passion and creative freedom. Their relationship seemed unshakable, a couple everyone envied. They had a luxurious apartment in one of the city's most elegant neighborhoods, friendships built at business events and social parties, and the certainty that their love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. Jack was always proud of that. He liked to believe that Anna was his foundation, the pillar that supported his busy life, and that the nights they spent together were the reward for all their daily effort. However, this tranquility was only apparent. There was something hanging in the air, almost invisible but present, a kind of silent tension that not even Jack could understand. In the last few months, Anna had changed. She began to spend more time outside the home, attending art events and dinners with new friends. There was an excitement in her eyes, an excitement that Jack hadn't seen in years. "It's the work," she said. The gallery was expanding, needing new partnerships and connections. And he, always dedicated to seeing her happy, didn't question it. But the marriage was changing. Conversations at the dinner table became superficial, focused on everyday details, work activities and daily tasks. Nights of romance, which were once frequent and intense, turned into a more mechanical routine. Jack, tired from overwork and the desire to offer the best, didn't realize that the distance between the two was growing. Or maybe he noticed, but chose to ignore it. After all, silence about problems was easier than confronting them. Anna, in turn, also struggled with her own dilemmas. She loved Jack, loved the life they had together, but she felt like something inside her was dormant, hidden beneath layers of comfort and security. It was as if she lived in the shadow of something she no longer knew how to define. As safe and predictable as life with Jack was, there was a part of her that longed for something more, something she couldn't find in her marriage. That constant feeling that something was missing gnawed at her, a silent search for a spark, a moment of newness that would break the monotony that had settled into her life. It was in the midst of these confusing feelings that Anna met a new social circle. Art galleries, private parties and luxurious events became part of her routine. She told Jack it was important to be there to expand his gallery, to connect with artists and collectors. But these nights out also meant hours away from home, away from Jack, away from the obligations and burdens of being the perfect wife. She found herself immersed in a world of glamour, where people lived only for the moment, unconcerned about tomorrow. That seduced her. While Anna immersed herself in these new environments, Jack was unsuspecting. He believed that Anna's estrangement was a phase, that his wife was just focused on her own ambitions and passion for work. Sometimes he even blamed himself for being so focused on the company, on multiplying the family fortune, thinking that the time they didn't spend together was a natural consequence of their obligations. He imagined that the distance he felt was something that, with time and dedication, they would overcome together. And how could I suspect? Anna had always been a faithful companion, a partner who shared her pains and her dreams. But there was a third element in the equation that Jack didn't know about. A silent presence that began to appear on Anna's night outs, at the parties she attended. A new face, an attention she didn't find at home, an ear attentive to her frustrations and repressed desires. At first, it was just innocent flirting, nothing that crossed the line. Anna liked the attention, feeling desired, seeing herself as the woman who could still make an impact on someone other than her husband. I had no intention of going any further, I just wanted to feel something different. Interactions continued discreetly. Jack didn't question it, and Anna, believing that she could balance both sides of her life, began to get more and more involved with this new thing. Moments that she considered harmless became an outlet for her dissatisfaction and the predictable routine of her marriage. She thought she was in control, that she could live between two worlds without one interfering with the other. The weight of the secret didn't seem that great, as long as Jack didn't know, as long as appearances were kept. Meanwhile, Jack continued his tireless routine. In the morning, he left for work without realizing that something was terribly wrong in his own home. Anna's smile, which once warmed him, now seemed like a mask that hid secrets. He saw it as the natural wear and tear of a long marriage, as something they would overcome together, unaware that, while he believed everything was under control, the life they had built was about to fall apart. And Anna? Well, Anna didn't realize that the tenuous thread she was balancing was about to snap. That harmless flirting wouldn't just be a pastime. The search for something more, the desire to feel life pulse in a different way, pushed her in a dangerous direction. She thought she could live two lives, that she would be able to have everything without sacrificing anything. But the consequences of her choices were coming, and soon she would have to face the truth. What she didn't know was that Jack was about to discover more than she could ever imagine. And once that happened, there would be no going back. Jack's days became a tiring sequence of work and silence at home. He saw Anna's absence as a reflection of his own exhaustion, a distance fueled by the time he devoted to the office and the attention she gave to the gallery. But inside, he felt something was changing. One night, when he entered the apartment, he noticed the perfume she had left in the air. It wasn't the sweet, familiar smell of every day. It was different, striking, as if Anna was trying to remind herself, and the world, of a new identity. The bed, where they used to find themselves at the end of an exhausting day, was now just a soulless piece of furniture, with cold pillows and sheets that were almost never undone by the two of them. Jack started to observe Anna with a different look. She seemed to smile more on the phone than when she was with him, and the nights she spent out increased. He tried to justify it, telling himself that she needed this space, that new friendships would be good for her. But inside, a restless distrust gnawed at him, as if he were on the verge of discovering a truth he already knew but refused to accept. Anna, in turn, felt more alive than ever. Her world was a whirlwind of emotions, parties, dinners, meetings that made her forget her peaceful and predictable life with Jack. She dressed to impress, invested hours getting ready as if each event was a chance to live intensely. The new social circle embraced her warmly, and the casual flirtation with that mysterious man became a flame that warmed her when Jack wasn't around. Every word exchanged with him was a challenge to the rules she herself had established for their marriage. What started out as something harmless now seemed more real, more tempting. The days Anna spent at the gallery became a refuge, an escape into her own fantasies. She stayed there until late, answering messages on her cell phone, exchanging complicit glances with this man who had become more than a simple distraction. He made her feel wanted, alive, powerful. It was a dangerous game, and she knew it. But how to stop now? Every moment with him seemed to push her toward something new, unfamiliar, that made her forget the boring stability of her life with Jack. And Jack, amidst the endless meetings and contracts that needed his attention, couldn't get the feeling of emptiness out of his head. He started coming home early, hoping to find Anna and relive moments from the past. One night, determined to surprise her, he appeared at the gallery without warning. The lights were off, and the silence was profound. Jack thought about calling her, but then he saw, in the corner of the office, her cell phone vibrating frantically on the table, with an insistent call from a number he didn't recognize. And here was confirmation of something he had been trying to deny: Anna wasn't working late. She was somewhere, doing something she preferred to keep hidden. The tension inside Jack turned into obsession. He needed to know the truth, and he needed to know it quickly. In the days that followed, he began to watch Anna's every move. When she left, he checked the schedule and asked indirect questions to try to understand where she was. Anna responded calmly, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "It's a meeting with investors," she said in the sweet voice he knew so well. "I'll be back late, don't worry." But the answers she gave were like loose pieces of a puzzle. And Jack began to realize that something was out of place. He wasn't sure what, but he knew she was hiding something. It was then that an opportunity presented itself. A business trip that Jack would take to Europe, and which Anna welcomed with apparent relief. "It will be good for you to get some rest," she suggested. But he didn't board. Instead, he decided to remain silent, watching, waiting for her to fall for her own lie. And that's what happened. That same night, she left. She was dressed in a way Jack hadn't seen in a long time, a tight dress, high heels, her hair down in perfect waves. Jack followed at a distance, his hands sweating as he gripped the steering wheel, his mind tormented by the fear of what he might discover. He tried to rationalize it, telling himself it was a normal dinner, a work meeting. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. She stopped in front of an expensive restaurant in a part of town they rarely visited. And there he was. The man Jack didn't know, but who he now knew was the presence that occupied Anna's thoughts. The man who hugged her intimately, who held her hand as they entered the restaurant. Jack watched from afar, chest tight, the world falling around him. He felt the anger rising, the despair of seeing the woman he loved in the arms of another. But he couldn't act. Not yet. He needed more, he needed to be sure of what was happening, he needed to know how far she was willing to go. And then, he saw it. That same night, when dinner was over, he followed the car to a hotel. Anna's hand was intertwined with her lover's as they entered the lobby, and Jack knew that this would be the night that everything changed. He stood there for a while, watching them disappear into the elevator. And there, alone in his car, Jack was overcome by a deep, uncontrollable grief. He knew his marriage was over. He knew that the woman he loved so much, the woman he swore to protect and care for, was betraying every promise they made to each other. The betrayal was exposed. But Jack still had an ace up his sleeve. And what Anna didn't know was that the story was about to take a turn she could never have predicted. The morning silence was suffocating. Jack spent the night awake, sitting on the leather sofa in the living room, staring into the darkness of the apartment that seemed emptier than ever. He had seen everything with his own eyes, Anna walking into that hotel, smiling, holding another man's hand. Jack's cell phone vibrated every few minutes, work notifications, friends asking how he was doing, but he ignored it all. The only thing he could think about was the betrayal he had just witnessed, the woman who had betrayed his love, his trust, everything they had built together. Anna walked through the door as if nothing had happened. She was wearing the same dress as the night before, her hair was still messy, but she had a smile on her lips. He tried to look natural, as if he were coming back from an ordinary night. "Good morning," she said, awkwardly, as she placed her bag on the counter and adjusted her dress, which seemed too tight. Jack continued to sit on the couch, not responding. He just watched as she walked around the apartment, still not realizing that anything was different that morning. There was something dark in his gaze, something she couldn't ignore for long. "Didn't you go on a trip?" she asked, trying to hide the surprise in her voice. Jack didn't respond immediately. He just took a deep breath, controlling the anger that tried to dominate every fiber of his body. "I'm back," he finally replied, in a low, controlled voice that made Anna shudder. She tried to compose herself, to come up with some excuse, but the words stuck in her throat. There was no explanation for what he knew, for what he had seen. She knew she had been discovered, but she still had no idea what it meant. "So, was it a fun night?" Jack asked sarcastically, slowly getting up from the couch and walking over to her. "Did you get what you wanted? Enough to make you happy, Anna?" He looked into her eyes, and Anna could see the pain, the anger, and the heartbreak. She tried to respond, but the guilt was written all over her face. "Jack, he started to say, but the words disappeared into thin air. She felt herself crumbling inside, unable to face her husband. "Why, Anna?" His question came out as a whisper, a plea from someone desperately trying to understand. "Why lie? Why deceive me?" She was speechless, lost in her own lies, trying to find something that could justify what she had done. I don't know," was all he could answer. "It wasn't to hurt you." Her voice trailed off, and she fell silent. Little by little, Jack began to walk around her, like a predator surrounding its prey. "Wasn't it meant to hurt me?" He laughed, a dry, bitter laugh. "What do you think sleeping with another man is? A game? Do you think that doesn't destroy a person?" His voice rose with each word, while Anna flinched. She knew there was no excuse that could calm the storm that was about to break. It was then that Jack stopped, just inches away from her, his eyes fixed on hers. "You know what's worse, Anna?" He paused, waiting for her to respond, but she remained silent, trying to hide the tremor in her hands. "I knew everything. All this time. I knew. Every encounter, every lie. I was seeing everything." Anna turned pale. There was no way for him to know. There was no way he could have seen everything without her noticing. "Did you know?" she stammered, her voice cracking with disbelief and despair. Her head spun as she tried to understand how it all happened. "Yes," Jack replied, voice now low and controlled. "And you think I wouldn't do anything? That I would just let you get away with ruining our lives?" Anna blinked, trying to fight the panic building in her chest. She tried to find a way out, a way to explain, to beg for forgiveness. But with every second that passed, she realized there was no turning back. I can explain," she began, trying desperately to find some justification. "It was a mistake. I was lost, I never wanted to hurt you, Jack, you didn't mean to hurt me," he suddenly shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. "You have no idea what you did, do you? You have no idea how much you destroyed me." His hand hit the counter next to him hard, and Anna flinched at the noise. Tears began to stream down her face as she tried, futilely, to get closer to Jack. "Please listen to me, please," she begged, but he just shook his head, walking away. "Listen to what, Anna? An empty excuse? A pathetic attempt to justify your betrayal?" He paused for a moment, and then looked at her with a coldness she had never seen before. You don't deserve my forgiveness. And you won't have it. Anna tried to take his hand, but he jerked her away. Please let me explain. I was lost, Jack. I needed something that would make me feel alive again, that would make me feel, like before. Jack looked at her with disgust. Like before? Before what? Before me? You mean, before we had a life together? He approached her again, his eyes filled with anger and pain. Do you know what I did for you? Everything I built. Everything I left behind to make you happy. He paused, breathing heavily. But now, all that is over. Because you chose to destroy. She was sobbing now, trying to find anything to say, anything that could change the course of this conversation. I didn't want to destroy anything, Jack. I was confused. I was, what was? Jack interrupted her, his voice as cold as ice. Was I confused? That doesn't give you the right to cheat on me. That doesn't give you the right to end our lives. He took a deep breath, trying to control the urge to scream. Do you know what I did while you were away, with your lover? Anna couldn't respond. She just stared at him, afraid of what would come next. Jack took a deep breath and continued, I've made a decision. While you were having fun, I was protecting myself. He turned to the table, picked up a folder and threw it onto the dining table, papers scattering in all directions. Here is our divorce. I already signed. And you have nothing left. Anna looked at the papers, confused, trying to understand what was happening. What do you mean? I have nothing left. What did you do? Her voice was shaking, full of panic. He smiled, a bitter smile, and said, Did you really think you could run away with my fortune? That she could live her life of luxury with another man while I stayed behind? I blocked all your accounts. Every penny. Everything that was mine is now mine again. No. No. You can't do this, she screamed, trying to grab the papers, her eyes full of tears, her mind filled with despair. I already did. His voice was merciless, cutting. You will pay, Anna. You will pay for every lie, for every betrayal, for every moment you stole from us. And now you will face the consequences. Anna fell to her knees, breathing heavily, trying to process everything she had just heard. Jack looked down on her, like a judge ready to deliver the final sentence. It's over, Anna. Everything you had, all your plans. I ended them before you even started. And there, on that cold floor, Anna understood that her life was ruined. And the biggest betrayal of all was yet to be revealed. Anna was in shock. Jack's words still echoed in his mind like thunder that never stopped. As she remained on her knees, her face pale and her hands shaking trying to pick up the scattered papers on the floor, the reality of her situation began to become overwhelmingly clear. Her meticulous plan, the secret escape with her lover, her entire new life that she thought she was so close to conquering, everything vanished before her in a matter of seconds. Now there it was, in pieces, before Jack's eyes, the man she had sworn to love forever. Jack watched her, and what had once been anger and burning fury in his eyes began to turn into a cold, calculating calm. He knew he had control of the situation, that he had managed to turn the tide before Anna even realized it. The pain, however, was still there, buried beneath layers of contempt and outrage. But there was something more in that expression of his, a sense of taking justice into his own hands, a bitter victory over someone he believed to be his greatest partner. While Anna tried to compose herself, trying to understand if there was any way to fix what had happened, Jack was already looking to the future. He knew there was no more marriage, there was no more life together. Just fragments of something he no longer wanted to put together. You can't do this, please, we can work it out, talk about it. Anna's voice was a weak whisper, broken by shame and fear. She tried to get closer, to touch Jack's arm, but he backed away, as if her presence was something that repelled him. Solve. Solve what, Anna? What's left to solve? He took a step back, crossing his arms, as if placing an invisible barrier between the two. You chose this path, and now you'll have to follow it alone. Anna felt like a stranger in her own home. The furniture, the hand-picked decor, every painting hanging on the wall, everything now seemed to be part of a life she no longer belonged to. What was so safe, so familiar, seemed to move further and further away. She tried to find some strength, some logic that would make her fight. I was lost, Jack. I don't know. I don't know how this happened. I can change, let me fix everything. Jack interrupted, his voice hard, unwavering. Do you think it's about redeeming yourself? That it's about righting a wrong? He approached her, bending down to be at eye level with Anna. You broke me, Anna. You broke what we had, and there's no way to fix that. It's not just a mistake, it's a choice. You chose to betray me, you chose to deceive me, you chose to end it all. She shook her head frantically, as if she could erase the truth with a simple movement, but there was no denying it. His eyes found the floor, unable to hold Jack's furious gaze, unable to face the weight of his own betrayal. She had made a mistake, yes, but she could never have imagined that Jack would take such a radical, definitive action. But then, Jack's voice softened, not in tenderness, but in a tone of almost pity. You know, Anna, the most ironic part of all this, is that I loved you. I really loved you. And maybe, on some level, I still do. But that love died last night. Those words hit her like a physical blow. Anna felt the ground disappear beneath her feet as the last hope of rescuing her marriage crumbled before her. Now, what do I do? She whispered, almost like a lost child, as if she were adrift in an ocean of chaos of her own making. She didn't know who she was anymore, she didn't know where to go. The lover, who until then seemed like a romantic escape, was now just a distant echo, a bitter reminder of a fatal mistake. The world as she knew it was falling apart, and she couldn't find her footing. Jack stood up, straightening his shirt sleeves, regaining his posture. Now, you live with the consequences of your choices. I'm tired of living for someone who doesn't value me. I'm tired of being the only one trying to save something that's already dead. He walked to the door, the house key now cold and useless in his hand. I already did what I had to do, Anna. And now, it's up to you. Anna remained silent as Jack walked through the door, leaving her alone in the middle of the room that suddenly seemed too huge, too empty. She looked around, her gaze lost, not knowing whether to cry, scream or simply disappear. Memories of their marriage came flooding back like a torrent, the first meetings, the knowing smiles, the vows of eternal love. Every image was now a cruel reminder of what she had destroyed. The moral dilemma he faced was cruel. Anna had committed what she considered an unforgivable act, but now she was paying the price, and the price was too high to bear. The betrayal she had committed had not only ruined her life with Jack, but now it seemed to ruin her relationship with herself as well. The lover, the future she dreamed of living far away, everything had turned into nothing. Just the emptiness, the despair and the pain of having destroyed the only person who truly cared about her. As Anna stood alone, the echo of the slamming door still ringing in her ears, she knew that her life would never be the same. Jack wouldn't come back. The love they had was lost forever, and she knew that even if she tried to move on, even if she tried to build a new life, she would always carry with her the weight of her betrayal. The world continued to spin around her, but for Anna, everything was frozen in that moment when everything she knew was ripped from her hands. And as the hours dragged on and night began to fall, she asked herself, what was left to be done? Where would she go? And, above all, would she be able to bear the consequences of her own choices, now that there was no turning back? But the story is not over yet. One last truth was about to be revealed, something Anna could never have predicted, and that would change everything. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Jack made sure to get away from Anna as quickly as possible. While she wandered around the apartment, the lawyers were going through the entire divorce process, and the silence between them was almost tangible. Anna tried to assimilate reality. She was about to lose everything, her home, her life, her financial stability. And it wasn't just the separation, it wasn't just the loss of Jack that haunted her. What really left her in pieces was knowing that her own family, whom she loved so much, knew about the betrayal. In a desperate attempt to find support and try to save part of her life, Anna decided to look for her parents. She imagined that they would welcome her, that, despite everything, they would protect her as they always had. But when she arrived at her parents' house, the reception was not what she expected. His parents knew everything. They knew about the betrayal, about Anna's attempt to escape with Jack's fortune, and they were disgusted. "How did you have the courage to do that?" her mother asked, her eyes full of tears, her voice shaking with indignation. "After everything he did for you. You shamed us." Anna tried to justify herself, tried to seek comfort, but her parents were irreducible. The news had spread through the family, and no one was willing to forgive her or even help her. "We love you, Anna, but we cannot support what you did," said the father, his voice firm and his decision clear to cut ties with his daughter. "You destroyed your own life. Now it's up to you." Without family support, without the comforts of home, and with no one to turn to, Anna returned to the empty apartment she had once called home. His mind was in chaos, the shame and guilt were unbearable. She tried to call her lover, but the calls went straight to voicemail. He didn't want to be found. He was no longer interested in taking the risks or consequences of a life with Anna. And so, in a last attempt to get some answers, Anna went looking for him. When she finally found him, what she saw hit her like a knife stuck in her chest. He had another one. It was nothing like Anna had imagined. That lover, who seemed ready to run away and start a new life, was already moving on, with another woman in his arms, smiling as if nothing had happened. "Did you think I would wait for you?" he said, without the slightest emotion. "It was just fun, Anna. Wake up to life." That was the last straw for Anna. Abandoned by everyone, without a family, without a lover, without a husband, she realized she had nowhere else to run. Not only had she destroyed her own marriage, but now she found herself alone, plunged into a pit of regret and despair. No direction, no future. All she had left was emptiness, and the memory of a life she herself ruined. Jack, on the other hand, began to rebuild his life. He knew that the process of overcoming betrayal would not be easy, but now, without the weight of a relationship tainted by lies, he could focus on himself. He began to invest time in activities that he had long put aside, met old friends and reconnected with his own passions. There was pain there, of course, but also a release. Jack was able to recover financially as he had taken all necessary precautions before confronting Anna. His possessions were safe, and he was able to start over without the threat of losing everything he had worked for. One quiet afternoon months later, he received an unexpected call. It was Anna's mother. She called to apologize for what her daughter had done, expressing her sadness at seeing Anna take that path in life. "We lost our daughter to her own choices," the mother said, her voice breaking. "And as much as it hurts to say it, you did the right thing. I hope you find the peace and happiness you deserve." That call wasn't necessary for Jack, but it brought a sense of closure. He knew he had made the right decision, that the love he had felt for Anna could not justify what she did, and that he had the right to move on. And so he did. Over time, Jack was able to open up to new relationships. Every step he took towards the future was marked by a conscious decision not to let the past define him. He learned to trust again, to love maturely and, above all, to value himself as he deserved. Meanwhile, Anna has disappeared. Shame made her move cities, trying to leave behind her reputation as a traitor, but loneliness and regret followed her wherever she went. She tried to find work, build a new life, but the stigma of betrayal was like a shadow that haunted her. With each new attempt, the rejection was the same, and the memory of her own ruin made her question whether she could ever forgive herself. And that's how Jack and Anna's lives took different paths. Him, regaining his freedom and rediscovering who he was outside of a marriage that suffocated him. She, paying the price for her own choices, unsuccessfully seeking a forgiveness that she knew would never come. So, what did you think of this story? Share your opinion in the comments, we want to know. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, take the opportunity to subscribe now so you don't miss any more stories like this. Here we do not support any type of betrayal, but we believe it is important to show how it can destroy lives, hearts and families. Until next time.